Hello, I'm retired Battalion Chief Larry Cockman from the Greensboro, North Carolina Fire Department History Book Committee. We're here today at the Greensboro Historical Museum. I'm standing in front of the General Green, the first steam pumper, or as they called it back then, the steamer. Today, December 9th, 2019, we are starting a new tradition of recording and preserving the heritage and culture of our retirees. Our retirees have contributed so much to the success of our great fire department. Their stories retire with them and are sometimes gone forever when they pass away. They will share their emergency calls that will always be a part of their memories forever. So sit back and listen as they carry us through their journey in the Greensboro Fire Department.
Okay, it's William Thomas Brasswell. Everybody called me Tommy. I'm 56 years old, and I retired as a captain on the Greensboro Fire Department. I was born in Greensboro, but when I was 2 or 3 years old, I was moved to Brown Summit, where I was raised. Yes, my father was a Greensboro firefighter. I called him last night to give me a little bit of history behind him. I always knew he was, but he was hired in about 62 or 63, just before or the same time I was born. He was stationed at Station 3 on Vine Street, which is now Yanceyville. And he was hired with that group of firefighters that they came on the line for several months before they got a group of people together to run actually a fire academy. And he was on the line for Engine 3 for about 3 months, and he went into the fire academy and they was doing a boot slide when it was pouring down rain. And he lost his boot lost his grip, and as he slid down, he reached up and grabbed the rope and tried to catch himself, and it ripped all his tendons off his shoulder. Moonwire called him in the office and asked him if he thought if he was to go down in a fire, if he thought he could pull him out at that point in time, and Dad said no, so he was released. Larry Brasswell. I graduated high school in '82. I went to work at Fire District 13. I was also a volunteer there. I was one of the first part-time paid employees they had in about 1983. I was making $3.10 an hour. I was at one of their outlying stations by myself. We had 3 stations. They had the main station on Lee's Chapel and the other 2 stations. We were out on the outlying stations by ourselves. I was also attending GTCC, working on my fire science degree. I tried and get into the military. I wanted to go into firefighting. Air Force had a weight limit and a height limit. I didn't meet neither one of those. The Army said there was no height or weight limit. So when I went to APs in Charlotte for my physical to get my papers to go to boot camp, they told me I didn't weigh enough. I was off by 5 pounds. And they told me that I asked if I could gain the 5 pounds over the next 3 months until I graduated high school. And they said, well, if you do that and don't gain the weight, we'll put you anywhere we want you to. So I went back home, continued college. Somebody called me in the ranking up in the Army and told me they had got my name approved for the next firefighting school. And I asked about the weight, and they said, well, we know how serious you was wanting the firefighting school. We decided to go ahead and accept you, even though you had not gained the 5 pounds. He said, but there's one exception. And I said, what is that? And it was like at 3:30 in the afternoon. He said, how close are you to a bus station? And I lived in Brown Summit. And I said, probably 30, 45 minutes. He said, you got 10 minutes to leave the house to be on the last bus going to boot camp to get you into firefighting school. So I said, well, you know, I says, you're calling me at 3:30. You want me to leave for 8 to 10 weeks and not even say goodbye to my family. And he said, well, that's about what it amounts to me. I said, I tell you what, I said, thank you for your information. I'm going to stay home and see if I can do something local. I always wanted to be a firefighter. And the reason I think I knew that was my daddy was, when we moved to Brown Summit, my daddy was a volunteer firefighter for 30 years, Fire District 13 also. and we didn't live but maybe a half a mile from the fire station. So when I was age enough to ride my own bicycle and leave home, ride the bicycle away from home, I'd always go to the fire station and hang out up there and got to know those guys. And then when I turned 15 and a half, I got into their associate program. And when I turned the associate program, I was not allowed to ride any fire trucks or anything like that. I couldn't go on any fire calls. But I did was, when I turned 18, I was able to start riding fire trucks. So the day I was 18, I was in taking a written test for Fire District 13. Now, to go back a little earlier, when my daddy was keeping me and they would get a fire call at Fire District 13, he would take me in the car seat and set me out on the hood of the truck while he was standing there pumping it. Because we lived so close to the fire station, he usually was always the driver. And at that point in time, the motors were out front and they had the longer noses on them, and he'd take me in the car seat and set me on the hood of the fire truck while he was pumping the engine. Well, it took me 6 times. I was hired after the 6th try. I tried right out of high school in '82, did not get hired to '88. You had the physical abilities test. You had to pick several sections of 2.5 up, set in the back of a pickup truck. You had to take it out. You had pull-ups you had to do, push-ups, set-ups. Had to drag some hose. You had to set in the window with the pond pier ladder and raise it and stick it in the next window above you, and then you had to pick it up and bring it back down. Then it was kind of just a waiting game, and the captains used to go out and do all the background checks, and they would go to your high school. They talked to your teachers you had in high school, what kind of guy you were. One of the captains was out doing in my neighborhood I was actually living in. He come to my house, and I seen who it was. I was there. Used to work for Insurance Service Office, ISO. And I seen what he did. When he pulled in the driveway, he got out and had a uniform on, Class A uniform. He walks up and knocks on my door, and I tell him to come in, and he says, I'd like to know about William T. Brasswell. We're looking at him about hiring him on the fire department. And I said, well, what do you need to know about him? And he said, I just want to know what kind of guy he is. And I told the captain, I said, he's probably one of the most wonderful guys you ever meet. He's outgoing, he likes helping people, and we went on for probably 30 minutes, and finally I asked him, I just couldn't do it no more. I asked him, I said, do you really realize where you're at? He says, I'm across the street from Mr. Brasswell's house. And I said, no, sir. I said, you're sitting in his living room. Starting salary was $15,800. My take-home pay was less than $800 a month after taxes and, of course, your 457 and all that other stuff. My training class consisted of 25 people. 2 of those were with Reedsville Fire Department, and one of those from Reedsville he is the chief of Reedsville Fire Department now, and it has been for several years. Had my very best friend, David Brame, David Garrett, Pat Henley, Tommy Brown, T-Bone Brown, Ed Smithy, Don Alva Smith, and by the way, I think me and Paul Brooks is the only one that still calls him Don Alva Smith. Everybody else calls him Don or Don Smith. Had Gary Brown, which he went out on disability. Lee Penry, I think he ended up quitting later on. Had a couple guys who did not finish the class. There's only 4 of us left working. This has not retired. It's still left on the fire department. Well, it's always on Fridays we had entertainment day. And it was always something going on off the grid. There was they would have a fashion show, female fashion show, shooting bow and arrows. There was a lot of stuff going on during training on the Fridays when we wasn't outside washing the public's cars, because on Fridays we washed all the chief's cars, and we were between the garage and Station 1 doing it. Well, any public would drive by, they thought it was a car wash, so our captains would say, yeah, y'all come on back in and we'll we'll wash your car for you. There was, when we jumped into the life net, where they told us how to use the life net, and this was one of the things there was 3 or 4 things we had to do to continue through training. If not, we was sent home. One of them was jumping into the life net from the first floor window and then story and a half fire escape. So they told us how to use it, how to hold the life net and twist your arms when the weight hits and all that stuff. Well, we're all standing there and we're kind of looking at each other. All of a sudden, this 5-gallon foam bucket comes out of the third floor window, and everybody continues to stay like this. We don't do like we break our wrists like we're supposed to. Well, Chief Cox was our battalion chief in training. He threw that 5-gallon bucket of foam and see what we was going to do. So as soon as we dumped the foam out of the life net, we got back set. He comes out of the window, and that was pretty funny. And we had several guys that was jokesters. One we called Rambo, because when we first showed up for training for about the first 3 or 4 weeks, we wore our private civilian clothes, blue jeans and old t-shirts, and he shows up in fatigue army pants. So he picks up the name Rambo. I was glad as a firefighter because when I went for my interview, first sit-down interview I got was with Captain Spears and Brad Cox. And as soon as I walked in, they just asked a few little information. They asked me if I had any traffic tickets. I said, no, sir, I had not had a traffic ticket. And he looked at me and said, how about this prayer for judgment? And I says, well, prayer for judgment, my understanding was that I got the prayer for judgment recorded on a speeding ticket. If I got a ticket within the next 5 years, it would be completely erased. Well, he said, we got it, is what he told me. And then he asked me, he says, why do you want to be a firefighter? And I looked at him, I said, Chief, I says, this is my 6th time I have applied. This is the first time I got to an interview. I says, I think that should be a good enough answer for you. My first station assignment was Station 6, Engine 6, on Westover Terrace at Wendover, where old New 5 is now. It was Engine 6. My captain was Captain Page. Like a lot of the man, he had been on like 28, 29 years when I came on. He worked about 2 years past me, and at my retirement luncheon, he was there, and he had been retired as long as I had worked. So I thought that was pretty neat. Yep. I did pick up a nickname of Yo Sam, short for Yosemite Sam, and how that come about was I used to wear a mustache really long past my lips, which I was illegal most of the time. And on my bachelor party, Chief Carmen was my battalion chief, and he was coming to my bachelor party. We were meeting at my house and then going out and having a good time on the town. Chief Carmen called me, his car had broke down up on Summit Avenue and Cone Boulevard. So I said, all right, Chief, where you at? I'll be there and get you in a minute. So I go get Chief Carmen. He gets in my truck. We drive and when he's sitting there, he has his hood up. I pull up behind him, see if there's anything we can do about getting his car running. Well, these 2 little teenagers drove up behind my truck, started blowing the horn and hollering and screaming and get out of the way and all this, that, and the other. And Chief Carmen, he hollers back at them. So we close the hood, he gets in my truck, and I leave my gun. I had a pistol in my seat. I laid up on the dash. He said, Brasswell, he said, that's what I'm talking about. He said, I ain't got to worry about nothing going around with you. Well, the next day, at the next shift, he tells Gary Church, and from then on, he started saying, Yosemite Sam, carrying around his side pistols, hollering hee-haw, because I had the mustache. Yes, the union was active. I was not a union member. I did get promoted. When I got promoted to FBO, or Fire Equipment Operator, in 1995, I was assigned to a union station. And a lot of you guys don't remember what the union stations were. It was Station 12 and Station 20. And the reason the union was representative there, because there was the union was arguing back and forth with the government or the city or something about the 15 minutes having to be at work at 7:45 instead of 8 o'clock. So I was stationed at a station. I had to be there at 7:45 and nobody else had to be there until 8 a.m. So I was not an active member. I did go to a couple meetings. At that point in time, I didn't like what was going on. So I just never joined. I am an active union member now, though, and have been for probably 20, 25 years. Okay. My crew's cooked and we ate together. That's one of the things later on I would mention in what I would pass on to young firefighters. That's where you have the most fun, in my opinion, is during mealtime, at the fire stations, because all the other part of the days, you're either doing some type of training, you're riding medical calls or fire calls, and that's, to me, that was the most fun part of the day. It was sitting at the meal table. There was all kinds of jokes or something going on. I was not that great a cook. I got everybody by, as well was my motto. I'll get you until 8 o'clock in the morning. And I hope you like what I'm fixing, because I don't go around and ask each individual person what you like. And I'm the same way. If you cooked something that I didn't like, I just didn't eat it, but I paid. We didn't ride medical calls when I first come on the fire department. So assigned to Engine 6, my first fire was a fire alarm at National Bank on Elm Eugene Street. I don't remember the particulars about it, but it was a fire alarm. When I went to Station 6, Chief Carmen and Chief Maintenance, who I had later on, I wasn't on for probably 3 or 4 months. And if we was riding 4 people, they would send me over to Station 7 and ride Squad 7. And I would ride the 3rd man over to Squad 7. One of the chiefs would call me and says, Tom, sometime after dinner, he said, run over to Station 7 and ride over there the rest of the night. And that's where I got my taste first riding medical calls. Because on the engines, we didn't ride them until several years later when the squads were starting to get phased out. When I was at Fire District 13, I had several house fires, and I said earlier when I was by myself that I would have to lay a line into the property myself. I'd get off the truck, lay a feeder line in. I'd drive across through the woods, houses way back in the woods that were actually burning. I'd pull the hose lines off. I'd get them stretched. I'd go back and charge the hose lines. Then I would put my turnout gear on, and then I would go pick up one of the hose lines, and I'd start fighting fire until other people got there. Now, a volunteer department, you were having to rely on mostly guys who was off or who wasn't at work, especially during the day. And a lot of the time it was farmers. So you were probably there by yourself 30, 45 minutes before anything ever happened. I was also, along my time when I was at Fire District 13, I was on the GASP dive team. I actually started the GASP dive team. Me and Wayne Schofield, who is deceased now, we had a car in Lake Jeanette, and it was at nighttime, probably 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. I was the first one there. Jerry Phillips was there. He was on another truck. I tied a rope off to myself, and I went looking for the car in the water. It was submerged. I found the car, but I couldn't go under the water because the gas and the oils was burning my eyes. So I kind of held the car to where, I didn't hold the car, but I stayed where the car was at. I think I was up on the roof of the car. The police department had a dive team, but they were basically recovery of weapons and stuff like that for crimes. So they all, when we made the phone call to them, they had to go to downtown, the police station, get their van that had their dive stuff, get their divers together. They come back and they would basically hook the cars up to a tow truck, and they would pull the cars out, and the victim was still sitting in the seat. Well, later that night, I mentioned to Wayne Schofield, I said, you know, this county really needs a dive team. And this was back like in 1983. So we kind of got it, me and him put our heads together and we got it started. And in 1984, there was about 15 of us became certified divers. All the monies that we spent come out of our own pockets. We used to dive in golf ponds to raise money by getting golf balls, and we had bought an old wash machine that we could hook a hose pipe up to, and we'd wash the golf balls, and we'd sell them back to the golf course for probably anywhere from 3 cents to a nickel a piece. And that's how we raised money to pay for our air. We had a little girl, Abigail Bly, that went missing, and there was a big, large creek behind her house, and we searched for 3 days for her. And we had all these people calling in, telling, I've had this vision, this is where this little girl is, you need to go check this out. And I mean, there was a numerous amount of phone calls. They had a palm reader, and I would have never believed this before, but they had a palm reader, and the girl was autistic. She was about 7 or 8 years old, and the palm reader said autistic children are drawn to water. We knew she was drunk. We felt like she was in the creek. Well, they went into her room and started searching, and she had made a drawing a few days before of the creek running behind her property, and it was way back in the woods. And she had drawn a bridge across this creek. So we decided we'd go search this bridge. What it was a big, large log jam. So we searched that log jam very hard and vigorously, and that's where we found her at. Some of the fires I was on Guilford Builders twice. Okay. I was on the Ireland House fire, which was a balloon structure that every wall we opened up was on fire. Brasswell was off of Nightmare Road, and this is kind of an amazing story. When I was with Fire District 13, I'm not sure if I was actually an employee for Greensboro at the time, but me and David Brame was visiting his mom at San Souci Apartments at Cone and Church Street, and a structure fire came out on Brasswell, which was in the county at the time, and that was off Nightmare Road. When we come out of San Souci Apartments, we could see the column of smoke in the sky. Well, we did not have any turnout gear with us, so we went straight there. And as we pulled up, there was a neighbor pulling the man of the house out of the window, out of a bedroom window, and the siding was just melting and running down. Didn't see any fire at the time, it was just heavy smoke and the siding running off the side of the house. Well, when they get him drug out, I run up to him and ask him, I said, is there anybody else in the house? And he says, my baby's in a crib in the front living room. So I went on the front porch, opened the front door, smoke, zero visibility, smoke and heat down to the floor. I shut the door back. Our chief is arriving at the time, and at that time the chiefs in the county wore white. So I grabbed his coat, I grabbed his helmet, and I grabbed his air pack out of the back of his van, and about that, our chief's car, and about that time the first engine pulls up. Well, I needed turnout pants and boots. So the driver had his on, and I stripped him down, or he stripped himself down and gave me his boots. Well, I went into the house with a charged hose line, couldn't find anything. I finally found the baby crib. I pulled it out. There was nothing in it. So nothing in it. We go ahead and put out the fire. Later we find out that the gentleman had worked third shift at Cole Mills. He came in and went to bed. His wife takes the baby and they go shopping or go out to eat or do something. So the baby was not even there. But really the moral of this story, really how you believe what your beliefs are. There was a console TV in the front living room, the room that I had searched for this baby. And it had burnt completely up. And it had a family Bible that was sitting on the very top of the TV. The TV was completely disintegrated. All the pages on this Bible was burnt all the way around the edges. The cover and the back was burnt, all except where it said Holy Bible. And all the pages, you could flip through the pages, and the burn pattern didn't even touch all the words. It was hard. I've got chills talking about it right now. But that was just an amazing, experience there. Now we get back to the dive team. After we started the dive team, I was on Greensboro Fire Department for 2 weeks. We were hired April 1st. About April 15th, the dive team got a call of a van in Lake Townsend at the marina. Well, I didn't live too far from the fire station, but instead of me going to the fire station, I threw all my dive gear in the back of the car, or back of my truck, and I took off down to the marina. When I get there, there's this van in the water, and one of our dive team members was right around the corner, Tim Carter, which he's deceased now too. He's coming out of the water with the man of the van. And later on, we find out that the man driving the van apparently had a massive heart attack while he was backing the boat in. Well, when he was backing the boat in, the van went on off into the water, and it was completely submerged. Well, when I get there, Tim Carter tells me there's a lady still in the van. So this was in April. Water was cold. We measured it was 54 degrees. Well, I donned my breathing apparatus, my dive gear, went in blue jeans and a long sleeve flannel shirt. And it was very extremely cold. When I got out, it took me 20 minutes before I could put words back together. I went inside the van. I had to go, I couldn't get the sliding door open because originally they said that the door was open when it went in the water, and I guess the pressure of the water closed it. So I went in the driver's door because it was open. I swam in the back and found the lady floating. Well, I pulled her back through the driver's door, pulled her to the dock where EMS was waiting, and I hollered at EMS. I says, do aggressive warming and CPR, aggressive CPR. And this was just when we started hearing about cold water drownings. Well, she lived. She was 58 years old, 58 or 59 years old. It's the first cold water drowning in the state of North Carolina, and it was the oldest cold water drowning in the United States. And I don't know how long she lived. I didn't stay in contact. I wish now that I did. Didn't stay in contact, but I think she lived several years after that. Whether she had any damage, brain damage or not, I don't know. I was also, the fires that I was on, one of the major fires I was on, Eastern Guilford. I was a driver on engine 56, and we were the first Greensboro company to arrive at Eastern Guilford. We were supposed to have been on the first alarm, because normally on fire alarms we would have went to assist McLeansville Fire Department. We don't know why they didn't dispatch us. When the radio call come out, we were all sitting on the truck, just thought we were going. When they never said engine 56, of course we stood down and we listened to the radio on their TAC channel. And he finally called for a second alarm, Chief 7 did. And we got there, and going down the road, Captain Ray was my captain, which is Chief Ray now. On the way down our window, we could see the large column of smoke. And I told Captain Ray at the time, I says, if we leave this call and nobody dies or gets hurt, we've had a very lucky day. So when we get there, they assign us to the room of origin. So we took an inch and a half, because that's what they had, was inch and a half. We took an inch and a half in the back stairwell. And as we was going up the steps are surrounded with I can't remember what class fire rated walls, but they're block walls. And as we got up to the second floor, the blocks had separated in their mortar joints so far you could stick a gloved hand in between the blocks. Well, that's telling me right there that the steel, structural steel, how much it has already elongated to separate those blocks. So when we get up on the second floor, we was probably 50 feet from supposedly the room of origin. The ceiling tiles had already fallen, and I looked down the hallway, and the metal roof deck was glowing red. It had already got into the roof, and you could probably take an egg and pitch it up on the ceiling, and it was stuck and it would have fried. So we made our way into the room of origin. Now, granted, we know that the fire's already got into the ceiling and it's already walking away. So we start trying to fight fire in this room, knock this room down, and it's just amazing if you think of a school today, how do you burn something like this? We were making pretty good headway, and then all of a sudden our hose would go limp and fall over and just dangle. And later we found out is whenever they charged a ladder truck outside, it being in the county and only having yard hydrants, that's where we was losing all our pressure. So we come out, we make several different other attempts to try to get back inside. We kept losing pressure. They finally decided they was going to move us around to the front and go back into interior division, or Division 2, and try to make one last stand. So we humped I took about 100 foot of 4-inch hose on my shoulder, and I was laying it out as we was going up the steps. You're talking about zero visibility, and the plan was to wire this off into 2 2.5s and go down each each hallway in the front from the foyer, and this was on the second floor. There was water probably almost knee level. It was so hot you could feel it through your boots. The floor that was in there, everybody knows what the floor of a high school is made out of. I can't remember what the name of it is, but I think it was because it was so much wax and you had water. The water was hot, it was making it slick, so you had to kind of shimmy along to move through the floor or across the floor. Every door, the teachers had locked all the doors when they came out, because I think that's what their protocol is. So we had to force all the doors. We got all the hose lines laid out, and we're talking zero visibility, working with flashlights. Water dripping off your head. You see fire drip every once in a while. They charged the hose line. You could hear it coming up the steps, and when it charged, it just took your feet out from under you, and you was on your back because that's how slick the floor was. So anyway, we fought fire there and fought fire hard as we could. And that was one time I didn't think I was coming out. I looked at Captain Ray. I says, we kept hearing something. We thought it was the building collapsing. And I told Captain Ray, I said, we're going to have to find us another way out of here. So they finally called for evacuation or to get out of the building. So we got out of the building, we came back out the way we went, and later we found out that what we were hearing was the ladder trucks sweeping across the top of the roof is what was making the sound that we thought was collapsing. So we come out and they sent us to rehab. Well, Captain Brame was on ladder 43. Me and David Brame go back to the 8th grade. We hunted together, we fished together, we double dated together, we did everything. Went through training together. And it was the lowest thing, hardest hit me. I came out, he was standing there getting ready to go on with his crew. And he says, what did y'all get accomplished? And I told him where we went, where the hose lines was laid out, what we were trying to do. He says, okay. I turn and go to rehab. Well, I changed my air bottle out. Everybody else takes their coat and stuff off. And whenever I was in rehab, I never dressed completely down because you didn't know what was going to happen in the next minute or two, just in case you needed to respond quickly. I was standing there, had my air pack on, had my coat unbuttoned. I already changed my air bottle. And all of a sudden, I heard this loud noise. We turned around and the front of the building comes down. And we had just come out probably a minute or two prior. Some of the bricks falls on the ladder truck is out there pumping. So when I go back, they said 43 was still inside. So me and two other firefighters, I grabbed another hand line off the truck that was sitting in front, pulled it and stretched it, and I got to the front door going after Brame and his crew, and something told me I need to make sure he's in there first. There was company officers or chiefs walking around. And I said, where's ladder 43? We don't know. I said, well, you was assigned to where they replaced us up on the second floor. And so they just kept saying, I don't know. I said, call him and find out where he was at. Well, they called 3 different times and never get an answer back. So I said, well, me and my crew, we're headed in. They were going in when we were coming out, and it hadn't been 5 minutes ago. So finally, somebody hears ladder 43 on the radio, and they had told him not to go inside and moved him back to the rear division, Division 4. So that was pretty bad. That was really probably the only fire that I thought I was not going to come out of. 9/11 affected me very hard. My wife was a police officer at the time. Every waking minute that we were at home, we were in front of the TV, watching what was going on. Because we knew, I don't think either one of us really said it to each other, but we knew if that would have been in Greensboro, that could have been both of us snuffed out at the same time. Because I know she would have been there with the role she was doing in the police department. I mean, I don't know. We were just there every waking minute and was constantly watching it. I was out, that happened the morning I got off duty. I was out mowing some yards on my days off. I kept noticing people congregating in the parking lots of my commercial properties I was mowing, and they were talking. So I'd walk up and I'd ask, what's going on? And they said, a plane just hit the trade center. Well, I said, okay, well, I'm gonna keep on mowing. I just thought it was a routine thing, because you know, it's been bombed before. It was actually bombed 6 weeks after I was there in '93. So I went on to the next property and was mowing. Well, I got in a different parking lot, and people were still standing around their cars. So I pulled up and said, what is going on? Why is everybody congregating around everybody's vehicles? They had the radios on. They said, well, just had the second plane hit the second tower, and there's a plane going into the Pentagon, and the president has approved the shooting down of American Air or any airlines in the air that wasn't going to land. And I just kind of, I said, whoa. So I called Sean and I said, you know what's going on? She was at work. I said, you know what's going on? She said, yeah, we're sitting here watching. So I said, I got to go home. I said, I can't continue working. So I get part of the way, I get about halfway home, and I says, you know, I got to see what's going on. So I pulled in, I think it's H.H. Gregg out on Wendover, which is an appliance store, and they had all their TVs on in the back. So I stood there probably an hour and a half watching all the news channels they had. And then finally I got in the truck and went home, and from then on, me and the wife stayed there. And in February, right after 9/11, me and my wife went to New York, and we were very fortunate that we got to go down. There was a family viewing, and then there was a public viewing platforms that they had built. Well, we got to go onto the family viewing because we were firefighters and police officers. And that afternoon, as we was walking around Manhattan, they had this, it's unbelievable how much territory they had blocked off down there. We walked up to a police officer, and I told him, I said, me and my wife's on the job in North Carolina. I said, can we get any closer? He says, yeah. So he gives us a hard hat, and he takes us down and gives us a tour of the pit. And then he takes us over to 1010 house, which is a fire station right next door that it collapsed on. They was using that as a staging area. So he took us up onto the roof, and we got to look. And then later on that night, we got back to the hotel, and we were staying up around Times Square. And that night, about midnight, I told Sean, I said, I got to go back down to Ground Zero. I said, something is pulling me back. She said, we've been down there all day. She said, I just can't go back. I got on the subway and went by myself, and probably stayed almost daylight, talking to the police officers that was at the family and police and firefighter viewing area, and then this little boy come walking up, he'd lost his dad. Talked to them, and of course I had taken patches and pins and that kind of stuff to give out. One of the police officers actually gave me a pin to give to my wife that they gave them if they were at Ground Zero on 9/11. He took it off his shirt and gave it to me and told me to give it to my wife. Any mentors that helped me out on the fire department? I guess there was Captain Page. He's always going to be one of your, because he was your first captain. I think your first training officers you have would be Chief Brooks or Captain Brooks and Captain Spears. Captain Spears actually hired me when I got interviewed. He promoted me to FEO, and he promoted me to captain. So that was pretty neat. And to tell you a quick story about making captain, I was on the captain's list. Didn't make the list that I was on was getting ready to run out, so I had to retake the captain's test again. So I retook the captain's test, went back to another oral interview. So in September or October, I guess it was October, Chief Spears calls me on my cell phone. He says, hey buddy, what's going on? I said, down at the Outer Banks, brought my dad down here to take him fishing. He said, how long are you going to be down there? I said, well, we're going to be here about a week. I think we're supposed to come back in Saturday. He says, okay, just calling, checking on you, see how everything was going. So I hung up the phone, and me and Chief Spears had rode motorcycles, and we was in the Red Knights together and all that. And I got to thinking, I said, this is a weird phone call. So my shift was actually on duty that day, and I was off. So I called, talked to Captain Ray, and I said, Captain Ray, I said, anything going on at the fire department I need to know about? Mind you, I ain't even thought about being on the captain's list. I ain't even think about it. Never crossed my mind. He says, nah, Brass. He said, nothing I know going on right now. I said, all right, I just got this weird phone call, and I told him what happened. He said, well, I don't know what it is. So I hang up the phone. About 15 minutes, 20 minutes later, Chief Ray calls me back. No, Chief Spears called me back. About 15 minutes later, he said, it's Chief Spears, just giving you a call. He said, I got Chief Shoemate on the phone, or on the speakerphone with me. He said, so want to make sure you know he's here before we start talking. He said, just want to let you know you promoted to captain as of December 15th. And I said, and of course we carried on and laughed a little bit. And I said, you know, I said, this is pretty cool. I said, I didn't get called, didn't get promoted. I got called on the telephone. So we talked for a few minutes, and we hang up. They didn't know where I was going. It was kidded that I was going over into the Fire Prevention Bureau. And I said, oh no, I can't do that. I can't do this 8 to 5 stuff. So we laughed and carried on. So hung up the phone, and I just got the phone hung up. Captain Ray calls me. He says, Captain Ray, he says, this is Captain Ray. He says, Battalion Chief just called, says they need you up in at admin in 30 minutes in Class A uniform to promote you. I said, well, Captain Ray, I said, that ain't gonna happen. I said, I'm 6 hours away from home. I said, that ain't gonna happen today. And he said, well, I'm just telling you what they said. I said, well, I just talked to Chief Spears, and I said, they told me I promoted as of December 15th, Captain. So, the most heartbreaking, I've had several. There's a lot of heartbreaking moments in the fire service, especially as many medical calls we was riding. I was a driver on Engine 7. I had 2 infant SIDS, CPRs, 2 shifts in a row in the same apartment complex. We were doing CPR in the back of the ambulance unit. Paramedics calls for orders, the doctors was DCing it, and mamas was sitting in the front seat and looking back at us, and paramedic looked at me, he said, we got to DC this. I said, we just can't do that. I said, we need to run this into the hospital. We can't do it sitting here in the parking lot. We need to blow this into the hospital. You don't have to run 39 aggressive. That's just, I don't know really what you want to call. We need to show mama that we're doing all we can do and just not calling it off this quick. Some of the proudest moments was when I went on the squad, I think. Went on the squad, rode Squad 5. I was in 1991 during the first Gulf War. I was assigned to the Animal House for a short period of time on Ladder 11 because we lost some reservists going over to fight in the Gulf. And then I was assigned to Engine 15 as a second driver. Now, I hadn't been on since 88, and then this is 91, and I'm already getting moved around to be second drivers, and then I got moved to the Engine 8 as a second driver for a period of time. Actually, then when I come back to 5, I went on Squad 5. And after about 2.5 years of Squad 5, I got promoted to driver, or made a driver's list. That was probably my highest thing I would like was my driver's list. We were competing 100 people taking the test for 20 positions, and you had to score a 100. You was not taking the 94, 95, and 96. You had to make a perfect 100, and it got down to there's only 9 of us that made it. Oh yeah, my whole career I'd do it all over again. Yeah. Oh yeah, roles of firefighters going on medical calls now. You almost have to be a doctor to work it now. We were given EpiPens where we didn't used to, with EMT defibrillators. I think they're giving EpiPens now by shot instead of the nose shot. You have to draw up different medications now. You almost have to be a paramedic to be on the fire truck. Well, family did, because they always told me that there was nothing out there that I couldn't do. I could always do whatever I wanted to do. I just had to put my head to it. My grandfather, Brasswell, he was probably my biggest person I looked up to. He only had a 6th grade education, but he worked every day. He was a strong man. He was a very family man. we did a lot together. He raised me when my parents went back to work after I was born. My health's actually improved. I got away from the firehouse cooking. I've lost about 50 pounds. I feel better. You would be amazed on how much stress. You don't really realize how much stress you're under until you retire, and it just kind of rolls off your back. I have though had stage 1 melanoma since I've left, which is a skin cancer, and the doctor wouldn't come out and tell me that it was job related, but I know it was, because it was right in the waistline where the bunker pants and turnout gears and all that. That's one of the places that's highly susceptible. This is advice I'd give to a young firefighter. Save your sick time. Put as much money as your 457 as you can, or your 401k. Listen to the older firefighters. You may not think it now from what you hear when you're younger, but you will look back on it after you retire or after you get to their point in your career, because it's going to get here fast. That, you know, that guy was right. Train hard, but enjoy it. Enjoy your training, and always get away from, do the basic training, but do some off the wall crazy training, because the number of calls you're riding now, you're going to see the crazy stuff. So that's what you need to train for. Now, I'll give you a little example. When I was on Engine 4, captain on Engine 4, and I didn't get to go to my 19th year through my 25th year, which now that I look back on it, I've been trying to go my whole career, but it beat me down. It wore me out. We was riding 3,500, and I hear they're up to 4,000 calls a year now. On Sundays, very first thing we do on Sunday morning, as soon as we got our gear on the truck, we'd go to 200 Spring Garden Street. We'd put our full turnout gear on, high-rise packs, air packs, and we'd walk 16 floors and back down. We were done for Sunday. And that was just to let them guys know, I didn't make you do it, because I couldn't make you do it, but when we go to that fire and it's on the 16th floor, or if it's on the 12th floor, you'll know how it's going to feel when you get there. And actually it did pay off, because we did have a fire when I was there on the 16th floor. Fortunately, it was on the top floor. And anything above the 6th floor is up to the company officer whether he wanted to use the elevator or not. So we elevator to about the 10th floor, we got off, we walked the last 6. And that, I think, the guys really seen that, hey, that captain, he ain't crazy. This is what we do. What I'd like for the fire department to remember about me, he made a decision and he stuck to it. He would worry about the consequences later. What I would like my family to remember me about, well, that I was a hard worker. I showed up at work even when I was not expected to be at work. I was not a type to, if my stomach hurt, I had a headache, or it was snowing, I was at work. I was not one of them just called out sick to be calling out to have a day off. I never done that. In 30 years, I've never done that. My wife, I've been married to her for 29 years. She was a police officer, and believe it or not, it's pretty tough when you got a police and fire. Probably the two highest divorce rates in the United States. And we made it basically 25 years when I retired, or 26 years. That's a whole lot harder now because I'm home every day instead of being gone every second day. She liked that day. She liked that 24 hours by herself. I think the dedication to my friends. If I tell a friend I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. You know, if it's going to take a lot for me not to. So I think that's probably what I want my family to remember. During training, there was one of the questions you asked during training about our lows. Probably the lowest point we had in training was our class was kind of diversified. We had some guys that was in their 20s. We had a couple guys that was probably approaching 40. We had 2 children that were straight out of high school. Both of them were 18 years old. At the time, you had to be 21 or 19 when you graduated. Well, one turned 19 like in June, the other one turned 19 like 4 days before we graduated on July 15th. We pulled together close real quick, and I think what did that was the low point. And it was, Tim Parrish got hired in our class. He was probably late 20s, married, 2 children. We were studying for our first test, which everybody knows is probably fire extinguishers, whether it still is now or not, I don't know. We was about 5 or 6 of us was at my house studying, and we did the study groups because that seemed to be what worked best for everybody. We was at my house studying. On Sunday afternoon, we was going to take the test Monday morning at like 8 or 8:30. Well, probably 9 because we did PT at 7:45 till about 9. So there was about 5 or 6 of us there studying. And when we broke up the study session, Tim Parrish had ridden up on what I call a crotch rocket or a ninja motorcycle, one of those fast motorcycles. He had ridden up on one of those and he parked it in the yard. Well, as he was leaving, he circled around in my yard, and I noticed he really wasn't that confident over the bike because he kept putting his foot down and when he was turning, and he really was not, I would say, not saying he never rode a bike, but it hadn't been a while since he rode one. So I walked over to him, I said, Tim, I says, and this is the type of guy, he was just a character. He kept the class laughing all the time, and I mean, it was something going on all the time with him. So when he goes out of the driveway, I told him, I says, don't go out here on this road. I said, this road will throw you or mess with you bad because it's Hillcroft Road. I rode many calls when I was at Fire District 13 on this road because of the blind spots, the off cambers and all that. So anyway, he goes out of the driveway and he turns left and there's a long straightaway. Well, he gets on it pretty hard when he leaves. Well, we didn't hear the bike running no more, so I said, he's gone. Well, the next thing we know, here he comes back. And he comes back with a vengeance, and we hear him come down the hill, rocking through the gears. He gets in front of my house, and there was a slight curve, and there was a car coming the opposite direction. He touches the rear brakes. Well, it gets out from under him. 2 doors above my driveway, 2 houses above me, he goes out across the yard. And we're all standing out in the yard, and we're hearing this, and seeing the smoke coming out from under the tires. The bike goes out through the yard, he ends up in the ditch, hits a brick wall that was built over the culvert pipe that goes under the driveway. He hits that thing head on with his head. I had a split rail fence in front of my house. I don't even remember that fence. We took off up there, and as we was running up the street, and it's probably 100 feet or so, we was running up the street, and he raised his hand. Well, the first thing I popped in my mouth, heck, he's going to jump up and he's going to laugh this off and all that. So we get up there, he's agonal breathing, gurgling, helmet's busted all to pieces. He quit breathing, so we had to remove the helmet, and me and 3 classmates performed CPR on him. It was 3 of us who already had our certifications before we come on the fire department. And we got to ride and when they got there, they knew who he was because we told them who he was. And you know, had EMS and police and fire, they knew who their brothers and sisters are. So me and Ed Smitty rode in the ambulance into the hospital, working with the paramedics in the back. Got to the hospital and they pronounced him. But you know, the next morning at 7:45 on Monday morning, we were all standing in line. My training class meant so much to me. We were in line in PT at 7:45, just like we're supposed to be. Left his spot open the whole entire, from then on. We done our PT, got dressed, went into the classroom. Chief Brooks come in, he said, or Captain Brooks come in, he says, what you guys want to do? Y'all want to take the test or you want to take it tomorrow? We all said, let's do it now. We took the test, got it out of the way. They kind of give us the rest of the day off. Of course, they sat down and talked to us. It's kind of a post-incident analysis, stress debriefing, I think is what you call it now. Yeah. They sat with us out on the drill ground, not inside, out on the drill ground, and sat down, we talked. They got us uniforms because we didn't have Class B uniforms. They got us Class B uniforms ordered so we could participate in the funeral. So we did that. Another low point in the class was in the smoke lab. It was during fire extinguisher week, and they had, of course, we all know there was pits in the basement of the smoke lab, and they'd light it with diesel fuel, and we had to go take turns putting it out. All the windows was closed. We had no air packs on, nothing. So we go in the cellar entrance on, I guess it would be the east side of the church, east side of the building. We all go down to Chief Brooks and, or I keep calling him Chief Brooks, but Captain Brooks and Captain Spears told us, go down, put the wall on your left, follow the wall around, and when we tell you to stop, you stop. And once we get everybody in. So they go in, they shut the doors, they start lighting fires. Well, everybody takes a turn with a dry powder extinguisher going and putting the fire out. So we do this, when we were doing it probably for 4 or 5 guys that went. Well, one guy had come up and he had hit the fire somehow or another. It blowed the fuel and the fire and everything out of the pit. Well, it went over there in some old turnout coats and turnout boots that was old, and all that caught fire. Well, they told us, keep your hand on the left-hand wall, exit the building. Now no air packs, zero visibility. So where everybody starts moving to the left, well, when the group over here gets to all this turnout gear and these boots that are burning, they decide they're going to put the wall on the right-hand side and shift and go back the other way. Well, when they shifted and went like a search going back the other direction, we all balled up on the, I guess it would be the west side of the drill smoke lab. When we all balled up, we didn't know it, but there was a set of steps right there that comes out onto the first floor on the Church Street side. Well, we didn't know that because we'd never been in the smoke lab before. So we're all balled up. Well, now we're all trapped in here and can't go nowhere. Nobody knows where to go. And really there wasn't a panic at the time. We did have one guy running around and hollering, help me, help me, help me. Well, he eventually resigned not long after that. But it come to the point that Spears and Brooks says, they hollered, everybody get out now. We didn't know where to go. So we're in the smoke lab, and this is going on now for 10, 15 minutes. We're down on the floor, breathing as close as we can to the floor. We had our gloves covered, our nose and everything. Craig Smith, somehow or another, he found that exit, and he got to the top of the steps, and he started hollering. And then we started hollering, and as he was hollering, come to my boys, come to my boys, come to my boys. We all got up the steps and got out of the smoke lab. Spears had already went out. I think Engine 9 was on the drill ground. He had grabbed them and all their air packs. He had put one on himself and was coming back in to get us. So he got back in, got us to the door, got us up the steps. When we all come out, admin from Station 1, all the chiefs was coming across the parking lot. They almost killed the whole class almost died right there. The whole class. And I think since then, I think that was the last time they did the smoke lab without any kind of ventilation, I think they may still do it, but with windows on, but I think they probably do it with air packs now too. But that was probably the highs of training was 5 o'clock every afternoon. You made it through the day and was able to go home.
We hope you enjoyed watching these documentaries. It was our goal to share and preserve the memories of our retired Greensboro firefighters. It is our desire that these documentaries will inspire future generations to continue the brotherhood, sisterhood, and camaraderie while always striving for excellence in their careers. While fire apparatus, equipment, and technology have improved, several things will always remain the same. The courage and bravery it takes to mitigate natural and man-made disasters will always be a part of the job. Although our retirees are no longer a physical part of the GFD world, a giant piece of each retiree's memories have been shared with you today. These memories will be in their hearts and minds forever. A special thank you goes out to Captain Harold Haney for his many long hours of recording and editing. Thank you, Harold. A job well done.